there's some things that I give a lot of credibility to, and obviously some things that are fucking dumb as shit that come straight out of the mouths of jackasses in our community that are going on podcasts and spewing made-up stories. Welcome back to the channel, everybody. What are we doing today? Well, you guys just keep requesting that I react to or talk about this new controversy that's been spun up about a book called The Fort Bragg Cartels by Seth Harp that alleges some incredibly damning things about U.S. Army Special Forces and Delta Force. And so that's what we're going to do today. We're going to watch this interview, and I'm just going to react to it. And I know a lot of you guys are probably expecting, because of how much I obviously love and am passionate about Special Forces, that Nate is going to come on here and he's going to say, it's all lies, it's all false. No, that's not what I'm going to do. Now, to my best of my knowledge, I'm going to give my take on some of these claims. Some of this I think is very, very credible, and some of it I think is totally made up bullshit, and the author is probably going to get sued for some of it, but we'll get into that. So why don't we just jump into this thing? I'm going to go through this interview, react to it in real time, and give my opinions on it, all right? So don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, helps the channel, follow us on Patreon, grab some merch. Let's jump into it.
So if you can talk about drug trafficking and murder in the Special Forces, begin with what Fort Bragg is, who the Special Forces are, especially Delta Forces, and who these dead bodies are that are turning up all over Fort Bragg and the surrounding area.
Well, Trump says he wants to deploy military forces to countries like Mexico to crack down on drug cartels there. But I think he should look closer to home, because there's at least 14 cases that I'm tracking of Fort Bragg trained soldiers who have been either arrested, apprehended, or killed in the course of trafficking drugs in the last 5 years or so, often in conjunction with those very same Mexican drug cartels.
Okay, so right out the gate, he's going to make claims that a bunch of Fort Bragg soldiers have been arrested in conjunction with cartel drug trafficking. Yeah, this shouldn't surprise any of you. Dudes get popped for this type of shit all the time. We had multiple guys in 1st Special Forces Group get popped for drug trafficking while I was there. So, yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people hear this and are like, oh, that's crazy, soldiers and drug trafficking. I mean, there's some conflation between the organization of the Army or the organization of Special Forces carrying out drug trafficking with individual soldiers being involved in this type of stuff, okay? And that's not necessarily the best way to look at it, but we'll get more into it.
This is especially concerning because of what Fort Bragg is. It's not only the largest U.S. military base, but it's central to U.S. operations and special operations. It's the home of the 82nd Airborne Division, which is the United States' main contingency force. It's also the headquarters of the Green Berets, the Special Forces, as well as the Joint Special Operations Command, which includes Delta Force, which is the most true. That's JSOC.
All right, so to his point, Fort Bragg, yes, this is sort of the hub of the military. So should you be shocked that there is cartel involvement going on? No. Like, anybody who's been to Fort Bragg and in the surrounding areas, Fayetteville, Spring Lake, all these different areas, is going to know, man, there is, when you talk about like foreign adversaries and spies and all this different shit, everywhere you go, there's this type of stuff. You go into a sew shop, right? You need to get, you know, your rucksack sewed up or your PC with the different things. And the guy in there is some Chinese national who already knows exactly everything you need from, like, in the Special Forces qualification course. He's got the packing list. He's got everything. Yeah. So again, this is a sort of a center of hub of military activity and also intelligence. So it makes perfect sense that foreign adversaries, things like the cartel, would be, you know, operating in and around this area.
So you begin this book with the discovery of 2 bodies. Tell us when they were discovered and who those men were.
In December of 2020, 2 dead bodies were found on a remote training range at Fort Bragg. One of them was a member of Delta Force. They had both been shot to death. And the limited information from police at that time was that it was believed to be a double homicide from a drug deal gone wrong. The other person who was killed at that time was Timothy Dumas, who was a support officer, a logistics officer for JSOC. The other one, the Delta Force operator, his name was Billy Levine.
Yes, this story's been talked about on a lot of podcasts. It's not a super secret story. Yes, so two guys from, well, JSOC, one from Delta, one as a logistics officer, as he mentioned there, were found, their bodies were found dead on a drop zone. And there's a lot of rumors, right? And I don't know conclusively, but I can tell you a lot of different rumors. He claims here that this is a drug traffic involvement. There's also the rumors in the back channels that this was a hit carried out by Delta Force itself as an organization or by members of Delta Force against this individual. For what reason? I'm not sure. Was there drug trafficking going on? Was he going to expose Delta Force? Was he going to expose these other operators who were involved in some giant, crime syndicate? We don't know. But that supposedly is the rumors, right? But again, we'll have to see what he has to say.
Researching the book and reporting it, that Levine and Dumas were buying cocaine through the Los Zetas cartel in Mexico, which in fact was trained in the United States. It began as a joint project between the U.S. Special Forces and the Mexican government to create an elite paratrooper unit.
All right, so he's got the Los Zetas story a little bit right, a little bit wrong. So yes, members of what eventually became the Los Zetas were trained by U.S. Army Special Forces. They then sort of broke ranks. A few of them who were trained then went to the cartels and started training up the paramilitary. It wasn't as if there was this giant unit in Mexico that all got trained by Army Special Forces and Delta, and then that entire unit just went rogue as a cartel. That's not technically true. But to the broader point, are cartel members trained at Fort Bragg in America? Were they trained by U.S. Special Forces? Of course, and I'll explain to you. This isn't just the cartels. This has been going on with gangs like Bloods and the Crips for years, right? Where they'll actually send in young members that will join the military, get training, and then bring back tactics and things like that to the area. The cartel does the exact same thing. So yes, of course, there are tons of cartel members who are soldiers, active duty soldiers in the United States military. I know that shocks people to hear, but it's a real thing. As for training, let me break this down for you because, yes, we do train foreign national soldiers, right? So we have an exchange program as part of the Special Forces qualification course. A lot of people don't know this, where foreign students will come to our Q course to go through our Q course, Special Forces qualification course, the same course I went through, to become Green Berets. We'll then train them up, all of the training they get to become a Green Beret. They'll go back to their countries, and then they'll actually get recruited by the Mexican cartels to come work in Mexico and train the cartels in all the tactics and everything they learned from Green Berets, right? So that is 100% a real thing.
So why isn't there investigation going on? As President Trump tariffs Mexico and increases tariffs on Canada, talking about fentanyl, talk about what's happening at Bragg.
Well, on the contrary, there haven't been, not only has there not been any sort of reforms or any crackdown on this, but Trump and Hegseth, they make a big show of their support for Fort Bragg, changing the name back to Fort Bragg from Fort Liberty, giving speeches there, touting the Special Forces and the Airborne Corps, without really taking seriously some of these underlying and systemic issues, which are quite troubling.
So I talked about this in my literal last video with, Special Forces on life support. There's a lot of problems in Army and Special Forces right now. And I even said in the same video, talked about how, all the big talk of, getting back to lethality and being mission focused and all these things, it yaps from the top. And as from actual policy change and directives, nothing's being changed. Nothing's being done. I mean, that's not my opinion. That's just the reality of it. Now, for whatever reason or whoever you want to blame it on, okay, you can choose to do that. But as for, sort of the verbal posturing, yeah, it's not matching what's actually happening on the ground.
It's really shocking the degree to which the war in Afghanistan had to do with drugs and drug production. It's an aspect of the war that was never covered to the degree that it ought to have been. Afghanistan, under U.S. occupation, became by far the biggest narco state in the world, producing more heroin than the entire planet could absorb. Most of the drug trafficking and drug production was being carried out and done by warlords, police chiefs, militia commanders who are on the U.S. payroll in a corrupt structure, which you could plausibly describe as a cartel that went all the way up to the president of Afghanistan, Karzai and his brother, as well as Ashraf Ghani. During the entire time that the U.S. occupied the country, it was turning out staggering quantities of very high potency heroin, which flooded the entire planet and caused terrible heroin crises all over the world, including in the United States.
This is super disingenuous and misleading. Afghanistan under U.S. occupation did not become the #1 heroin narco state. Afghanistan has always been, for thousands of years, the #1 heroin narco state. 90+% of all the world's opium has always, for the most part, come out of Afghanistan. All right, so heroin, Afghanistan. I'll tell you guys just personal perspective and stories for when I was there and we were in southern Afghanistan, pretty much combating that heroin Silk Road from Pakistan that moves up through Kandahar, out into Helmand, and out towards Iran. Pretty much every single mission we went on, we would find, I don't know, anywhere between 10 to 30 bags of 10 to 15 pounds of heroin, 300, 400, 500 pounds of heroin a night. And never did we bring that back and give it to the Afghans. We always destroyed it on target. So it's a tough sell that U.S. Army Special Forces was the ones actually carrying out this drug trade. Now, was this actually going on? Yeah, I can tell you that heroin is everywhere, or was everywhere in Afghanistan. And yes, there's no surprise if you think about this, guys, that we had such a huge opiate problem in America up until right about the time that we left Afghanistan. And then what happened? The crisis turned to the fentanyl crisis. Why? Because, well, China moved into Afghanistan. They took control of the world's opium, which they have now. And then now instead they flood America with fentanyl because they have control of the opium. So again, maybe it's a coincidence, but probably not. All right, so let's call that the first half. We're actually going to switch over to a different interview he just did yesterday. But this is sort of the first half of things. I think it's fairly credible, right? A lot of this stuff is obviously and has been going on. It's not surprising. And I can show you this, guys. I don't know if you remember this huge story that came out. All right, so friendly reminder of this story. 2 Army Green Berets plead guilty in plot to smuggle 90 pounds of cocaine from Colombia. You guys didn't know what they did? They had a punching bag that they cut open and filled full of 90 pounds of cocaine and tried to smuggle it back in on a military AC-130 and got caught. So, yeah, let's be honest. Like, this type of stuff obviously has been going on. But I'm going to move into the second part of the interview where he makes the claims that, U.S. Special Forces and Delta Force are just slaughtering innocent people all throughout Afghanistan, and where this comes into the very not credible side of the story, and most likely he's actually probably going to get sued for a lot of the things he said in here. But let's jump into it.
Now, it's true that Delta Force does do capture missions. That certainly happens. I'm not in a position to say what the exact proportion is, but also just last night, I saw some comments by a former Delta Force commander named Jeff Teagues, in which he was saying basically the exact same kind of things as I was saying about the unit. He says, when we show up, we will kill you, your family, your village, your pets, your goldfish, was an exact quote from this individual. And he added that when the black helicopters show up, everyone dies. That's coming from a Delta Force commander to a podcaster named Dalton Fury just a few days ago.
So before we get started, this actually is going to get me riled up, but this right here is the perfect example of why, and you guys have heard me say it 100 times on this podcast, I cannot stand all of these lying grifters that in the fucking special operations space that go on to podcasts and fucking spew their bullshit made up fucking stories about how when they were in Delta Force, they slaughtered 200 fucking people in a night. And how, look how cool I am. Look how badass that is. And we kill everybody when we show up. Because then, while this obviously is not how any of this works downrange due to, the Geneva Convention and the fact we have ISR above us at all time that's literally video recording what we do. No, none of this happens. But when you're a journalist and you see some of these dumb fucks go onto podcasts and spew this nonsense, you then get to use it as a credible reference for your stories here. So again, that's why we're cleaning this space out.
I stand by my portrayal of Delta Force in the book. It was based on rigorous research and investigations and interviews.
Seth, to me, if I zoom out, and I know this all sounds tedious, but as you know, when dealing with special forces people, they like to get into the weeds. Controversy is very big amongst them. They enjoy sniping each other on podcasts. Yeah. Don't ask me why, but this has been long part of their own community.
First of all, Sauger, you don't know fucking fuck all about the special operations community. Let's lead with that. And no, that's not what happens. It's not they like to go on and snipe each other. It's the entire special operations and veteran community going and sniping a very specific handful of 3 to 4 people, right? Rob O'Neill and Tim Kennedy get targeted for a reason. So spare us the snarky fucking comments, Sauger. Why don't you stay in your fucking lane? You don't know anything about us.
Of what, 14, 15 deployments of gangsterism, of just, wantonly going in, running missions under the cover of darkness, of killing people, even capture. Even if you're doing so legally, you're not doing anything wrong, I'm saying.
All right, more to my point I just made. Oh, Sauger's point. Oh, Special Forces is a bunch of gangsters moving in the cover of night, murdering everyone. You know why they have this perception? Because of exactly what I just said. Shitheads from our community who are not professional, who go on podcasts and brag about this shit that it's always all made up as if it's something awesome. Like listen to fucking Tim Kennedy's stories. And that fuels the perception and for a book to be written like this. All right, so let me wrap it up. As you can see, there's some things that I give a lot of credibility to, and obviously some things that are fucking dumb as shit that come straight out of the mouths of jackasses in our community that are going on podcasts and spewing made up stories. So, yes, is there obviously a huge, potential cartel drug trafficking problem that is involved in U.S. military bases? Of course. That problem is everywhere in America, not just in the military. So it makes total sense that military members who don't make that much money might be incentivized into entering into criminal syndicate enterprises, right? Anybody in any organization can be drawn into that. The war in Afghanistan was completely all about opium. Completely? No. A lot of it? Yeah, probably. The pharmaceutical industry definitely appreciated that. But the military industrial complex also appreciated the trillions of dollars worth of bombs and equipment that were, being pumped out as well, right? And then the final one, U.S. Special Forces and Delta Force just go out every night and slaughter everyone and kill all the innocent people in the world. We are not the ones just going out willy-nilly, just obliterating everybody we see. It's not a thing. I can promise you that because look at like an example like Eddie Gallagher. Military tried to hang him out to dry and put him into prison for his entire life because of a detainee. Then you're going to claim that special operations units are going out and just slaughtering innocent women and children? Come on, man. Go f*** yourself. So that's going to be my opinions on this whole story. Again, I don't know everything. There's some things I know that are most likely true. And then there's the obvious ones in the back half that are just totally bullshit and made up. So from my personal perspective, let me know what you guys think. Do you guys think there's as much credibility as this guy talks about? I don't know. We'll have to find out. I do know he said some things about a very specific Delta Force operator in that book that are provably not true. And he is going to get sued for it. So it'd be interesting to see what happens for that. But we'll have to see. So I'll catch y'all in the next video.